Let's breathe into the intro. On three, take a deep breath in. One, two, three. One more. One, two, three. Deep breath in. Release. All right. Hey, Bria.
Hey, maybe.
So, are we jumping right in today?
Yeah, let's get to it.
All right. Welcome to the Yellow Couch Podcast. I am DeAndrea. That
And
is
I'm
Bria. And today we have been talking about misuse psychology terms, the most common ones, and how they have been prevalent or present in each of our lives.
let's start with a story, right?
Okay.
So you said that you have been misusing gaslighting.
Mm-hmm.
So let's hear about what was that about?
Okay. So for me, often when I am in disagreements with my husband, when we don't remember what was said, like, okay, we discussed this, we communicated about this, like, we'll be frustrated. Like, we communicated about this, we discussed this, for instance, and I'll be like, that's not what was said. Like, you told me A, B, and C. You didn't tell me D. And then he'll be adamant, I did tell you D. You must not have heard D, or you must have forgot D, but I did tell you D. And I'm like, I feel a little gaslit because I feel like this was not mentioned. Yes, I heard A, B, and C, but if you had mentioned D, then we would not be at F. We would not be here, because if you had mentioned this, then this would. So honestly, like, when it comes to gaslighting, I realized that I was using it wrong, because ultimately that's just us not remembering details of a conversation. That's not Jordan, my husband, by the way, telling me that what you remember is wrong, and your experience about something wasn't what it was. Like, he's not saying that to me. And that gives me a little bit of relief as well, because I go through life and I feel like I did the same thing to him. Like, I would say, hey, listen, I said this to you. I don't know if you remember, but I said this to you. Like, and he's
Mm.
like, you're gaslighting me. Like, so now at this point, it's like a thing that we were saying to each other, like, when we would be frustrated and nobody could remember specifically the details of what was said.
Right. And so like basically what ends up happening a lot of times when people use the word gaslighting is because there is some there is some similarities to the way that people are misusing it and then the way that it actually is supposed to be used, but the difference is it's not a point of contention over one specific detail, like minor detail of a thing. It's really more so of a prolonged period of trying to manipulate and control another person. And so I'll just read the definition just so all of our loved ones are clear on what gaslighting is. So this is according to Merriam-Webster dictionary. Gaslighting is psychological manipulation of a person, usually over an extended period of time, that causes the victim to question the validity of their own thoughts, perception of reality, or memories, and typically leads to confusion, loss of confidence and self esteem, uncertainty of one's emotional or mental stability, and a dependency on the perpetrator. So, this is different from how you might have perceived it prior to, just because of the simple fact that we know that Jordan is not trying to
Manipulate
manipulate
me.
you
Yeah.
and control you. He is Y'all are arguing over a point in the conversation where he remembers it one way, you remember it differently. And that's where the similarity lies, because it does feel like you're trying to deny my reality, but it's not
Right.
because he's trying to manipulate you. It's because he just remembers it differently than you do.
Right. And honestly, it's so easy to do that. Well, that's the whole point of this argument. If we were both on the same page about how something was said or what, when it was said, then there wouldn't be an argument or there wouldn't be a miscommunication and there wouldn't be this frustration. It's easy to just throw out this term gaslight because it's another way to like play the blame game. Like, oh, well, if you don't remember it the way that I remember it, like, then somebody must be trying to get over or trying to win the fight or the argument. And ultimately, like, for neither one of us, that is true. We're not trying to win the argument. We're trying to get through it and get the truth or come to a solution.
Yeah. And I want to say right now that the reason why we're talking about misuse psychology terms is not just because we talked about this on live. The reason why we are talking about misuse psychology is because psychology, especially since COVID, has become very, 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 very popular in social media, because the access that people have to therapy and things like that is not as accessible as it should be. And so therapists know this,
Mhm.
and they have done their job to try to educate the public so that people who don't have access to certain resources can still get the information. And so what that has done is created this explosion of the knowledge being passed around, and those of us who were able to go to therapy, we have been exposed to these terms as well. But we are recognizing how, because it is exploded and circulating on social media, that okay, we might not be using everything properly, and we just want to clear it up for the people, even though we're neither one of us are licensed psychologists or clinical psychologists or anything like that. We are aspiring to be, but we have been paying attention, and I think it's important for us to know. So yeah, just to jump back into the gaslighting, yeah, I definitely I don't believe that I really use the word gaslighting very much because I'm not really a fan of the word. Um, but I do feel like I have been on the other side of the conversation where people have tried to tell me that I was gaslighting them, and I was like, no, I'm not gaslighting you, because one, that's not even in my heart to be gaslighting, but two, um, I understood the actual meaning of the word, and sometimes things can be very, 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 very weaponized when our emotions are very heightened. We have a tendency to use words and not understand the full meaning of them. So, are y'all clear about what gaslighting is?
Yeah, I am. I'm definitely more clear about what gaslighting is. However, I like that she put the disclaimer about us not being licensed psychologists. If you do feel like something similar is happening to you, like you should definitely go and talk to someone who is licensed. And because honestly, what Bria was saying earlier, it does sometimes it can really feel like that. You might be in a relationship, friendship, um, have relationship with your parents, whatever, and you might come across this thing and you're like, well, I don't know if it's that or not, because you might not be able to communicate as well with the other person in that conversation and understand their side of things. Now, you could just ask, but sometimes it doesn't feel that safe to ask. So, in understanding that, it is important for you to go within, analyze within, but then also go to the person if you can, if you have an opportunity to ask these questions. But then also, if you really cannot come to any solution for yourself or within that relationship, it's really important to take it and escalate it to someone who's professional.
that takes me right on to the next one. I often hear and I often use the term boundaries.
Mhm.
Boundaries is like being a super popular word here lately, and I highly recommend. I have not been paid for this promotion, but I highly recommend Nedra Tawab Glover's books about boundaries, because that's the word. Um, she has a book about boundaries. She has a couple other books that surround the idea of boundaries from a different lens. But I highly recommend those books to anybody who wants to learn about boundaries and what they actually are and how to use them. So, just a little story time for me. I use the word boundaries often. And the reason why I use the word boundaries often is because my mom, love her down. She knows how to get me to do stuff that I don't want to do. It's the
Yeah.
love that she has, the love that I have for her. She knows how to, you love me, don't you? Can you
Yeah.
pull up on me? Can you do X, Y, and Z? And while I can appreciate, being needed and, helping my mother, I have had to learn how to say no. And I have had to learn how to not feel guilty about my no. So let's talk about what boundaries are and what they are not. You want to take this one, D, or you want me to grab it?
Okay, so playfully, one of my best friends, Khadija, will always be like, "My friend, no boundaries." It's in her astrological signs for y'all who love astrology. I'm an Aries, and I love to be like, "Hey, listen, back up. Hey, back up." I do feel like I have a strength in boundaries in some ways and a weakness in boundaries in other ways. And I will say this: boundaries are what I have learned in my own personal therapy. That boundaries are for yourself. Like you will have boundaries for yourself with other people, but those boundaries are for you to uphold with yourself. So, like for instance, I'll talk about work. I worked somewhere where um basically the person, and I'm sure other people can relate to this as well. The boss was asking me to take on more work, and the work was not in my job description, right? So they were like, "Okay, I'm willing to pay you a little bit extra for like on your hourly rate for this work." And I'm like, "Okay, cool, I can do that. I can get with that." All right. So at first it's going great. I'm working I'm working on one side doing one thing, and I'm working on the other side doing the other thing. And sometimes some days I work on both sides. When one side is not needing me as much, then I go back to my regularly scheduled plans, right? So the same person came back to me and they're like, "Hey, listen, so I'm not going to be able to pay you this amount every day. I'm only going to pay you on the days where you're needed or you've worked on both sides." And that's where I realized that I could not. I was like, I don't like this. I don't like this because for me, when it starts getting complicated and it starts getting like, okay, why is my rate going down on days that maybe I only did one thing on the other side, but why is my rate going on down? Because either way, you have the opportunity to come ask me to do this other work. And at any point in time, like if you forget that I did some work on that other side, are you devaluing that work now too? Like, so for me, it was a personal boundary that I realized, like, hey, listen, I don't want whatever my job description is for the future. Like, that's what the work that I'm doing. Like, I want to do that work. And if you want to hire me for another position, you're going to hire me for another position, and we're going to put this on paper, and it's going to be clearly identified what roles and duties that I'm going to have because I'm sure this person had it in their best interest, and maybe was trying to save a few monies, a money on payroll. And as a business owner myself, I was like, I understand that, but I don't mess with that. I get that you probably need to save a few bucks, but the way that this situation works, I'm on both sides every day. Regardless if I didn't do that much, like on one side, I'm on both sides every day because you have stuff going on every day on both sides, and I don't see how you're going to be able to separate that and say, "Oh, this is the day you're not." No, that's not going to make any sense, and I don't want to have to. I don't want to have to do even more work in trying to figure out what days you're paying me correctly for. So I was like, no, that's a boundary for me. I didn't say that to her, but for me, I was like, yeah, that's a boundary for me. Like I can't. I'm no longer willing to work in this way anymore. Like I'm learning my lesson on boundaries here and work boundaries. And since then, I have moved on from that job and I've been working for myself and I've been working in other contractual situations. And because I made the decision to walk away from that position, it strengthened me in my work boundaries. So like even though I'm not perfect at my work life balance, I am more consciously aware of like, okay, so what is this? If I'm given of this much time, what have I done to make sure that I'm ready for this? Like, such as today, this is another example of boundaries. Like, before getting on this here podcast that we're recording right now, like I had to say to myself, DeAndre, you have boundaries when it comes to how you take care of yourself and what you output. So here's the thing: if I haven't taken enough care of myself, it is up to me to take accountability for that, to communicate that to the other person that that I am working with and say, "Hey, listen, I was not able to do this morning. I wasn't able to take care of this stuff ahead of time, and these are the things that I need in order for me to be at my best on this podcast." And my gracious sister Bria was very kind and very patient in allowing for me to make myself something to eat, give myself some water, and so that we could start and get something done today. And that was all on personal boundaries.
Right. And I love that example. So just to be clear, audience, on what boundaries are. Boundaries are where we draw the line in order to protect ourselves emotionally, physically, and mentally in our relationships and in other aspects of our lives. It's all about protecting yourself, yes. But what it's not is about controlling the external environment around you and how that environment interacts with you, because we know that we have absolutely zero control over what other people do or what other things happen outside of ourselves. The only thing that we have control over is ourselves. And so, because of that, like the story that you said earlier about your job, when you realize that um, she was asking you to do something that was, violating your own personal boundaries for yourself, you made the decision to leave. You didn't try to um, correct her or make her do something different in order to accommodate your boundary. You made a decision on what you were going to do. And
Mhm.
that is what a boundary is. Sometimes people will misuse boundaries because yes, their personal boundaries have probably been violated, but instead of them doing what they can do to control their reaction or how they are going to handle the violation of the boundary, oftentimes people will say, "You're violating my boundaries. You need to do this. You need to do that. You need to do the third." And it's like, that's not actually how it works. You actually have to change yourself. do something differently for yourself. Um, and so to kind of bring it all the way back to like my first example with my mom, I don't tell my mom, you're violating my boundaries. Like, and now trust me, I've had to learn this, okay? But I don't say you're violating my boundaries, you blah 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 blah. I don't have to explicitly say that. I just simply let my no be no and my
Mhm.
yes be yes. And when I like if I want to do something to help her that she asks me to do, if I check with myself, am I in a position to be able to do this thing? Do I have the physical capacity, mental capacity, you know, whatever the capacity is? Do I have that to be able to do? Do I want to do this thing? And if the answer is yes, then I'm going to do it. And if I don't, then I'm going to honor myself and I'm going to say no. And I'm going to be gracious in my no. I'm not going to, be mean and nasty about it. But I'm going to say no. And I'm not going to allow for my mom to be like, oh, but don't you love me? Like, yes, I still love you. And the answer is still no. And that's just that on that. So I hope that like makes it more clear. Um, And obviously, sometimes it can be a case by case thing. If you got a question about whether you're using the term right, ask us. Like, I would love to talk about it. Not because we're experts, but because I like to chat. So
Yeah.
let's talk about
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
And oh, you wanted to add something else to it?
Yeah, I mean, okay, so there is a little bit of a hot topic of, you know, in the air when it comes to boundaries. Like, we've talked about work boundaries and familial boundaries through with us personally, but like a lot of the women out here are experiencing issues of boundaries with people who they're dating or people who are like they are getting to know, I guess, in a romantic way.
Okay.
And I thought it was really interesting because, like, a topic that's come up into my mind right now is like the boundaries of, okay, there's one side of it. There's women who, or there's a woman who wants for the guy who she's talking to call her a certain number of days. If he calls her a certain amount of days, then they might not have to meet up, see each other, whatever. But for her, it's about quality time. When he doesn't call her or they don't meet up like once a week, if he doesn't hold that space or that amount of days for her, then it's like, okay, well, I don't want to deal with him no more because he's not doing that. On the other side, the guy is like, okay, well, I have a lot of things going on. And yes, I did say that I wanted to be here for you in this way, talk to you, i.e., we have our date set aside, our day that can we set aside for each other. So if we have that open availability that day, we should come and see each other or hang out or have a date. So on his side, he's like, well, I've gotten really busy and my life really has a lot going on. And as long as I communicate that to you, it should be okay for us to continue continue our situation because I've communicated to you that things have not changed. Ultimately, like I'm not able to make our date. I'm not able to do this when you want it. I'm not able to be here for as long as you would like for me to be here. So I bring this up when it comes to boundaries because I thought it was interesting and I wanted to know your opinion, Bria. I thought it was interesting that both people have come to a agreement about conversations or days that they want to a day that they want to meet up, but ultimately, life be life and one or both might need to change the plans or need to do this or need to do that, and so they're not able to meet that mark when it comes to, well, this is our set aside day. My friend will say he's crossing a boundary for me. And I don't, for me, I'm like, I don't see that. I feel like that's something different, but I don't know. What do you think?
I'm with you. I don't think that. So because what she's speaking to is something different than what the boundary is. Let me get to it. Let me get to it. So
Mhm.
they picked a day that
Mhm.
they thought would work for them. And then
Yeah.
life happened, and then they had to make adjustments to the plan.
Yeah.
What she's feeling is disappointment because they're not able to hold this date that they had in mind.
Right.
But just because she's feeling disappointment because they can't hold the date does not mean that a boundary is being violated, because a date, holding a day in the calendar is not a boundary.
Mm.
That's an appointment.
Yeah.
Now, how they go about handling the rescheduling or the making the time work, figuring that out, problem solving that is what comes into play as far as whether a boundary is being crossed or not. So I
Right.
would ask her, what is the thing that needs to happen when the schedule does not allow for them to meet on the day that they had scheduled? Is he communicating to her that they need to reschedule? Is he working with her on, what something that would be agreed upon with both parties? Are they actually able to make up the time? You know what I'm saying? Like, is this something that, well, we said we were going to meet up on Tuesday and then we ended up doing it on Wednesday instead? Or is it, we said we was going to meet up on Tuesday, but then we couldn't do Tuesday, so then we rescheduled it to Friday, and then Friday came and then we rescheduled it to another day, and then we just keep on pushing it so we haven't seen each other, right?
Yeah.
if if that's the case, what you're really saying is, if it's the case that it keeps on moving and you aren't able to see each other, what you're really saying is this person is not making the space for me in their
Mhm.
life.
Yeah.
And that is different than saying, oh, this person is not showing up to our scheduled date,
Mm.
right? It's slightly different in the sense that if if the effort is being made, if true effort, right, not somebody playing with your time, because there is a
Right.
difference, right?
There is a big difference.
If a person is saying, hey, I am really trying to make this work,
Mhm.
and you eventually get around to making that time, that's one thing. But if you're saying, hey, personally for me, you don't have the time for me. Okay. If that person just, you recognize this person really doesn't have the time for you, and you have tried to make it work with the time. That is the boundary, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's very nuanced. It's very, you cannot blanket statement this thing because every situation is different. But you, I would be careful not to say, oh, because this person is not showing up on Tuesdays, like we said, that,
Mm.
you know what I'm saying, that this is a boundary violation. You have to actually identify what actually is the boundary, right? If the boundary is, hey, if something comes up, communicate with me, and that person
Mhm.
isn't communicating with you, that's a boundary violation.
Yeah.
If you're saying, hey, this person is constantly pushing me, making me, I'm not a priority for them, so everything else comes first, but when it comes time for us to spend time with each other, I get put on the bottom of the list. I never take priority. That's a boundary violation, right? But just the idea of this person not showing up on a Tuesday, that is not a boundary violation, that in and of itself. And that's in my opinion. Now, if a psychologist wants to come in here and tell me that I'm wrong, please do. But that's my take on it.
Yeah. And honestly, I feel um as you do when it comes to the second part of of it all. basically the second point that you made about communication and um making the space for somebody. Like, ultimately, if the boundary is this person does not make, or the boundary is, we, in order for us to deal with each other, there needs to be time set aside for us, and you need to be good about communicating and or communicating ahead of time. And there might be like a scheduled ahead of time, like I need this much time or whatever. But if that's communicated, like, and you don't do that, right? I need communication. I need for you to say, hey, listen, I'm going through something right now. I'm not going to be able to meet up with you. Like, whatever it may be, like, that's my opinion. Like, in my humble opinion, I'm a married woman, so I have a different, like, I have a different perspective now, I have a different lens now. But ultimately, like, if I was to be in her shoes and I'm thinking about this, like, okay, I have other things that I could be doing this weekend. I could be hanging out with my girls. I could be catching up on some sleep. I could be doing this. So the day that we had set aside, if you don't tell me, I could be getting some extra money. You know what I'm saying? If you don't let me know in a good enough amount of time and I'm still thinking that we're going to meet up on this day, like, then that means that I'm going to have to try to figure out something last minute to do for myself, which, we're all adults. You can do that. But ultimately, like, the boundary therein lies in the communication. And it's like, if you're not saying to me that things are changing or that you need, hey, listen, can we reschedule? I would like to reschedule. And that's how you, to me, communicate that you're making space for me, for us. Like, if you can't even make the space to communicate that you need help or you need a beat or you need, like, if you can't even do that, then I don't have faith in, you know, you making space for us. And ultimately, like, the boundary is that, like, you're just kind of treating this like it's like it's an afterthought. You're treating our relationship or whatever we're building as it's an afterthought. So you're not actually making that space for me. So if you're not making that space for me, then it's
Yeah.
fine.
Mhm. And so
But
just for me, when it comes to the clarity of that specific scenario, it's two things that could possibly be a boundary, and maybe there's something else extra that I'm not seeing, but there's two main things that could be the boundary violation in this scenario. One is communication. Is the person communicating properly when things go wrong or when something has to change that is goes against the original plan? That's the
mhm.
first one. And then the second one is making this person a priority. Is the relationship with this person a priority in your life? And you can see that in the actions that are done. So,
Mhm.
do you actually show up? When you have to reschedule, do you hold the space? Do you actually show up when it's time to reschedule? When you have to make a choice between this relationship and this other thing, whether it's a work obligation or hanging out with friends or, whatever it is, do you ever make this relationship the priority
Mhm.
and choose them first over the other thing? Because if you don't, that is the violation. So communication could be the boundary violation, and priority could be the boundary violation. And I would ask that person who's in that scenario to really assess, is it one of those things? And if it's neither one of those things, then is it really a boundary violation, or is it something completely different that we're missing
Right.
um, there?
Right. That's all I wanted to add because
Yeah.
I thought about
Yes,
this and I'm just like, dating, especially in the Black community, like, is a very, like, touchy topic right now. Um, and ultimately, like, I feel like when we talk about boundaries, we could talk about it all day. When it comes to dating, but, like, yeah, I was like, this is one that's, like, that's present right now. Like, how do you build something with somebody and still, like, have your boundaries? Like, you're essentially gonna be like creating some type of community environment with this person.
Hmm.
And ultimately, like, y'all will have to compromise and work together on things, but, like, ultimately, you can still have your boundaries and keep your boundaries, um, when you're in these relationships.
For sure. And that, speaking of boundaries, that takes me to the last pop psychology term that I want to bring up, which is one that often gets misused in the context of romantic relationships, and that's trauma bonding.
Ooh.
Um, Woo, that's a big one, right? So
Yeah.
people oftentimes will say, "Oh, I'm in a trauma bond. I'm trauma bonding. We done with the trauma bonds. We done with the trauma bonds." But a lot of times people are misusing this term. How are they misusing the term? Well, let's talk about what trauma bonding is. Trauma bonding is a deep emotional attachment that develops between a person experiencing abuse and their abuser,
Mm.
often in a cycle of abuse followed by positive reinforcement.
Mm.
So, what that means in layman terms is somebody has been abusing you and you are now in a attachment to that person. You are in a relationship to the person who is abusing you. This is not, oh, I got sexually assaulted as a kid. You got sexually assaulted as a kid. Let's get together and bond over the fact that we both have been sexually assaulted.
Mm.
That is a lot of oftentimes what people think trauma bonding is. People will think, oh, we had a similar upbringing, so we must be trauma bonded because we had a similar experience or whatever the case is. Now, the reason why this often gets misused, outside of just kind of hearing the term and then kind of making an assumption of what you think it is there is a similarity there. And the similarity is that oftentimes an abuser knows your traumas, your previous traumas. And sometimes that abuser has the same or
Yeah.
similar
Traumas.
abuses, traumas,
Mhm.
yes. And so because they can bond over those things, having that similarity, it is easier for the abuser to abuse the victim and then gain the attachment. And
Mm.
like the definition explained, is often followed by a positive reinforcement. And so where we see this happen a lot and most of the time is in romantic relationships. When you see women who end up in domestic violent situations, this is where you are a lot of the times going to see trauma bonding. There are women who will say, I really did love this guy. I really, in, enjoyed this person initially,
Mhm.
and then, something switched, something happened eventually. And then what followed it was maybe we had the best sex of my life, or like there was just something that happened. Maybe this person, bought them an extravagant gift or whatever. It's that positive reinforcement that keeps you attached to the very person that is abusing you or causing you so much trauma. And a lot of women don't, or a lot of victims in general may not necessarily understand that that's what's happening to them psychologically, which is why it's so hard for them to get out of those attachments because it's been reinforced over time.
Mm. That is heavy.
Hmm.
Um, that's very heavy. Um, I have been trauma bonded with
Okay.
someone, um, by the definition by the definition.
Hmm.
And ultimately, it exactly what you're saying is it was textbook. And
Hmm.
ultimately, like, the way that I was able to essentially get out of from that situation is understanding that this person not I didn't have to continue to like be attached to this person, but I definitely felt for this person. Like I was like, "Oh my gosh, like I want for him to be okay. I want for him to go on and lead a good life." And um I really want for this person to like, get out of the situation that they're in.
Mhm.
And and I feel like that's part of it as well is sometimes like, we'll want to help. We want to feel like we can really help somebody or pull somebody out of a situation. And sometimes the person will make you even feel like you are helping them that way.
Mm,
Like you're the key to my freedom.
mm,
You're the key to me getting out of this situation. And I just want all everybody to know, like, if you're going through this right now, like if this is something that you are feeling or you're currently going through, like I just want to let you know that like it is not your job to save them or pull them out of the darkness. Ultimately, that is it was never your job. And I know that you care, but the very best that you can do is pass on the information or pass on like a contact for them to get help out of their situation. But after that, you gotta you gotta try to make, if you can, you gotta try to make a clean getaway from it, because ultimately if you bond with a person and that y'all get too deeply attached, they're like a dependent on you, like they're depending on you for their life, like you even have a even stronger pull to stay in that situation. And all I can say from experience is that it is extremely hard. And I wasn't
yeah,
in the pits. It is extremely hard. It is an understatement to say that it's extremely hard. Is it feels impossible. Um,
for sure.
but it is possible. And ultimately, you know, in those situations when there is abuse starts to I got out as soon as I saw abuse try to permeate through, physical abuse permeating through in the relationship. I was like, "Nah. No. I can't excuse it. I have to get out of here. I know he's going through a lot. This might be the reason why he feels okay with putting his hands on me. But that is not enough for me to be like, "Oh, I'm going to stay here." No. 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 They need help. You can't give them that help.
Mhm.
You cannot.
Yeah. Yeah, and I just want to add that um, it's okay for you to save yourself and like let the chips fall where they may, outside of you saving yourself. Like it's okay for you to be selfish and to say, I'm going to save me and you're going to have to let God handle the rest because we are nobody's saviors. Okay. I don't care if
Right?
you're a therapist. I don't care if you are a doctor. I don't care like what your profession is, what your expertise lies in. You are not anyone's savior.
Mhm.
And we have to get out of the mindset, men and
Men,
women
women,
have
yeah.
to get out of the mindset of believing that we are here to save people. We cannot heal anybody. You
Mm-mm.
can even the people that call themselves healers, you cannot heal anybody. Healers make space for people to heal themselves and
Exactly.
let God heal them. That
Yes.
is not our job. And so when you can take the pressure off of yourself and not believe that you were put in somebody's life to save them,
Yes.
then you can make sure that you're not ending up in situations where you are um, unhealthily attached or bonded where you shouldn't be.
I'm gonna add something. And spiritually, because Bria started to touch on this, spiritually, I was given the advice by my father that just like as Bria is saying, like He straight up told me, "You are not God. Do you think you're God? You're not God." And I'm like, I didn't say that. But ultimately, it really woke me up because I'm not God. And I don't have the supernatural power to heal or, take you out of a situation. Ultimately, everything that I do, if God is blessing me with the resources to be able to share with other people, that's exactly what it is. It's the resources, being blessed with the resources to share with other people. But ultimately, in those situations, you spiritually, if you are in a spiritual practice, you can go to God and say, "Hey, listen, God, I need to release this to you. This is too heavy for me." Release it to God, give it to God, and say, "I have faith that God is going to do what God is supposed to do with this situation." Work your faith. Believe that God will handle that situation. No matter what that person comes back to you saying, "Hey, listen, I have my faith that God is going to help you. You are going to get out of that situation. But there's nothing more that I can do."
Yeah. And with that, let me put you on to some new music. If you have not heard of the Alex Isley,
Yes, she is amazing.
the girl is gifted.
Yeah.
Okay. She just recently dropped a project here in mid-April. Um, that is called, what is it?
When? Is it when?
When.
Yeah,
Yes, When.
when.
And there is a particular song on that project that I highly recommend for my people who are having a hard time letting go
Mm-hmm.
of relationships that maybe meant you thought were going to be that you thought they were going to last forever.
Mm-hmm.
The song is called Thank You for a Lovely Time. Check
Mm-hmm.
it out. Check it out. Let it speak to you. Open up your heart to actually listen to what it is that she's saying because baby, it's good.
It's
It
really
spoke to
good.
my heart. I eventually, as you guys continue to listen, you'll definitely get to hear a lot of my story. I have so many stories, but one in particular that I think just this particular song and this project definitely resonated with. So yeah, check out When by Alex Isley. Check out the song Thank You for a Lovely Time. It's good to say thank you for a lovely time.
with with all the great, that's what I love about Alex Asley, is that she has not only a graceful and beautiful, like songbird type of voice, but she also has a graceful poetry. Like her
Mm,
poetry is graceful. Like she's, even though she is, drawing the line in the sand, the boundary, um, she is saying with grace, "Thank you for a lovely time." In all sincerity. In all sincerity, thank you for the time that we've had together. But I am departing from this. I'm departing from this.
yeah,
This is all I had. This is all I'm giving to this. This is it. Yeah.
yeah. I think that's a good place to stop. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it
So
is.
we
So
love y'all.
I love you, Bria.
I love you too.
And you know what else we love? We love our loved ones, which is you. We want you to be heard on the yellow couch. So don't hesitate to send us your own yappings via email to yellowcouchlounge@gmail.com. Sorry, you guys. We want to share the conversation with you. So if you have any comments, stories, anything that you want to share regarding the topics that we talked about today, or if you have any topics that you want us to cover in our future podcast, Please do not hesitate to send us an email again at yellowcouchlounge@gmail.com. Everything is spelled correctly. Yellowcouchlounge@gmail.com.
And like our video for your algorithm.
Mm-hmm.
Invite your friends to the couch by sharing and add us to your contacts by subscribing. Okay. We love you and we're out. Peace.